This is the video that first inspired me about the Borena. This is YouTube. I got it from YouTube. Have you seen this? No. I'll tell you how I came to the Borena. In our school, we have the culture of our practice is Pan-African for the general idea. That means we're looking at the unity of Africa, and we want to draw on heritage from here and different parts of Africa. But Kemetic, that's ancient Egyptian for classic reference. The Borena, to my knowledge, they have a relationship to ancient Egypt, like this, the Kushite culture. So this is how I've come to Borena, because I know it has classic heritage. Then I know that looking at lunar cycles is important to do with time. The Borena use the lunar cycle, so I should have to study it. That's how I've come. That's why I'm talking to you.
Good. Perhaps, do you know Professor Menu Ampim?
No.
Yeah, Menu Ampim. He has just such an orientation, just like you. He's really now a big researcher on the African root of knowledge, African knowledge. He talked about this just like he came once just to Ethiopia. He's an Egyptian.
Where is he?
Egyptian now.
Egyptian.
Yeah.
Okay.
He just take the position of Egyptologists and just argue for the African indigenous knowledge and this conception, and that's very important. Anyway, you can go on to the line of your question. And there are so many researchers just who try to just do their best, but one of the big challenge even you may face, I hope, it will be that Borana have a kind of esoteric, hidden conception of things. They don't reveal all things just for the one who come from the external and ask them.
Yes.
Esoteric nature. Even the time that I talk about is that the knowledge of time itself, reckoning time itself. There are some people, some recognized socially acknowledged people called Ayantu. That knowledge, the knowledge of time is the knowledge of those people. Even the Boran themselves ask those people. There are Ayantu in Boran. Ayantu are those who are known with how to really record time. And there is specialists just in the modern context, expertise in the time knowledge. They are called Ayantu. Even for in Boran, to do some ritual, even to get married, or some very critical ritual events, then you must ask Ayantu what exactly the time that things should be done, and they just tell to you that the time is now. When I say the time, it is in relation to something that I told you.
Yes.
Value of
the whole
environment, the holistic conception.
Yes.
And then I want to have such a kind of comprehensive knowledge of the particular and indigenous knowledge of that particular society. Then they don't reveal really critical point to those who want to interview them. That is a gap. Even those researchers, the up to now researchers fail to understand that. They fail to understand. They wrote a lot about even some concept of time, but still the issue is still closed.
I hear.
It's closed. Even among the Boran themselves, they try to hide within each other, except those who are socially acknowledged, such a knowledge, such a spiritual knowledge. Perhaps I can promise you that I can really get such a people, and so that you can get very original things.
That is exactly what I need.
Yeah.
Can I ask you before, because I'm recording this this reasoning, introduce yourself, please. Then it's clear.
Yeah. I'm Guyo. Yes, already you have known, and I'm now working in Borena University, where Paris himself work, and as head of public and foreign relations of the university. That's what I'm.
Excellent.
And I have MA and even maybe an MA in philosophy.
Okay, well, that's fine. I know you are the very right person for me to meet. Yeah, so we're reasoning now about Borana time. Before when we were speaking, you mentioned that to talk about time, you have to talk about number, you have to talk about measure, and these things. So, really, I'm interested in getting an introduction. I didn't expect to see you here today, because I'm thinking I have to go to Borena. I'm leaving to England on Monday. Can I do it? This is what I'm thinking. When you're here. So we're here now talking.
Yeah,
this is it.
I say you're lucky. So, the next thing you want me to say?
Yeah, well, this group of people, I know there's different groups of Borana. So I'm trying to get my idea around the structure of a community. And this book, Gada, talks about the whole system. So I'm going to read that book. I'm going to read the material that I've been recommended to read. But it's useful for me just to hear a person who knows, just to speak about it. Then I have it in a natural way. This is a unified way of learning for me. And then I can embody it better. And when I read about it, I can place the reading somewhere into the context that you set for me, like this.
Yeah, that is good.
I mean, what is the area like? Even to know the geography relative, obviously it's not built up like Addis. It's a different area.
Right.
I've not been to the area.
Right.
I have travelled to Gonda, Lalibela, Bahada, Zukwala, Awasa. These are the areas I've been to, but I've not been as further down to. Yeah, so I have yet to see it, yet to know it like this. What is the area like that the Borana live in?
Yeah, this is very, very, very actually it's difficult to just point out just like why, because even the research done that now you have on your YouTube, done in the Borana in living part of Kenya, the Kenyan land, then Borana are now divided because of the political reason. One community of two countries, Ethiopia and Kenya, and that research is the research done in Kenya, particularly northern Kenya. And now, most of the time, the researchers consider this as a Borana, and that as something mixed.
The Kenyan side.
The Kenyan side, of course, they are the vast majority of the northern Kenyans are Borana. The vast majority. But before this new political arrangement, the Boran land goes as far to some part of Somali, Somaliland, very far at a distance from the now border.
Okay.
That is just cut off because of political reason. And that one is cut off and given to the Kenyan states, and the Borans are just somewhat scattered now, scattered, and their geographically their land is just a kind of just fragmented because of some political reason. But if you ask this question, some really very, very critical Borana guy, elders, if you ask them, they would answer just like, see, the Borana land is from Mombasa, part of Kenya, then to Lake Turkana, then from Lake Turkana to they call it a Dutch Warrab. A Dutch Warrab is now in Somali. Mombasa is in Kenya. Lake Turkana is in Kenya, and then from the northern here part to just like the Wadara. There is a place called Wadara now in Guji zone, and Guji people are living now there. Then the Borana have such this kind of very circular geographical land. They used to live just now. Such a place. Some of these places were really very ritual places. That even very helpful place even to know about them, because as I said, everything of the Borana, if you understand the time, you have to understand things. Things are in chain, very much connected.
Yes.
And even geographical, just location itself gives you some hints, some very additional hints for even the concept of time.
I hear you.
Like for instance, now today we say the north, the south, the east, the west, they have another conception for this. And this one depends on their geographical conception of them, where they dwell. That is some general view about the Borana geographical information. But now they are today they are really confined to a place called just around the Yavello. Perhaps you have on your map Arero. They are confined to this very very center because of some political reason, and the other one is just scattered and remain in Kenyan parts.
Okay.
That is, it is difficult to just locate the Borana and saying this. They are pastoralists for one thing. Then they move here and there and just
Okay. I get the idea. I've been to Mombasa, so I have a sense of what that is relative to Nairobi and to here. As I get a sense of that. This experience of being fragmented, as you are saying it, it doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound healthy. Is that a decline then? Is it challenging?
That's very much challenging. Very much challenging. Even that is for the Borana, that is an issue today. So that's an issue because they have a very indigenous conception and unique conception about land. Land, just as you have said in case of the time, land that is not in itself, land, a very holistic conception. Lands, they see themselves from the environmental point of view, from spiritually from the other, just call it God point of view. Then this issue really gives you a clue about how they feel now today. Just a fragmentation. That is a political issue, and that to some extent really influence it. Even their way of life. Their way of life is now influenced by that fragmentation. They consider themselves as disorganized, systematically disorganized people. Because if you cut off some part of the land, a plot of land, and give it to somebody else, then that part they consider it as a spiritual place where things are spiritually done, where ceremonies are spiritually done. Then they consider that as if something of culture, something of value, something of their humanity is taken away. Then they consider this fragmentation not as just like environmental fragmentation alone or just geographical fragmentation alone, but they consider as if their culture is taken off.
I hear you.
Just their spiritual thing is denied. Then their unity is just disarrayed. They have such a conception of now today. If you go there, you can get very much information about how they feel. That is very important. Of course, that is a political reason. It needs time to say.
See, like this conversation now about the way that people relate to space. In our school, we have a conception we call the Gazat. So Gazat is an Amerindia word for province, but we use that word for space. And we define it to say that the Gazat, the province, or the space, has land, air, and mind to it. These qualities, and that those are aspects of it, land, air, and mind, interrelated as a unity. And within that, there are 6 domains of it: personal, family, community, the nation, the earth, universe, as in all, like this. And this conception sets up a conception of space, like this. So we did that because people don't have an open idea of space, of their space. So a child coming into our school will think that space is set by the people around them in Europe, whereas a person should have a freedom to be in any space like this, as long as they are respectful in space, in the environment, They should have freedom to be anywhere. I feel this is in line with that idea.
Right.
Like this. And for me, the idea that you cannot go to a certain space, you cannot go to this area, is a foreign thing. It's a foreign concept. So, and for a child's well-being, they have to learn that they have ultimately freedom. Everyone, each one. And somehow we have to negotiate that as people, what that freedom means.
Freedom within.
Yeah, that's it. We have to work it out. But when there's a border, then it is a restriction. You're cutting off someone's true liberty to say you cannot go here. So anyway, we have this in our school. It's a conception called the Gazette. It means province or space. We do it as curricula, like this. And without this kind of learning, how can you go on to talk about physics? How can you go on to talk about the environment or your own personal space? You can't have these conversations if you don't have a broad idea about the whole thing. So this is why I'm talking to you, because I know the Borena, they sit with the reasoning like this.
Yeah, that's really very important. Now, for if really we deal with the Boran conception of time, space is there. Space is already there. Really, the space which is already there is again a different space, because they have a conception of stars and how stars are related to just our existence now, environment condition, how these are connected. Therefore, space they don't really restrict the conception of space even to the earth alone, but even to something that they are following.
That's right.
A star they are following. Now they have, just like as I've said, particularly 7 very important stars. Like they say here, urwuk'eht is a kind of star. Then in 3, appear always in 3. Then urwuk'eht has some very known location that usually it appear with. Then they have some, if urwuk'eht is there, at a time that they were expecting something else, if it is there, they expect that time, and even they know where that urwuk'eht is. But sometimes, unfortunately, the urwuk'eht may not be there, while the time is the time they are thinking of. Therefore, here they just relate these things to other spiritual issue, like bad luck or something like that. Why they say that? Then the space of the urwuk'eht, the space of that star is changed. The star the one which is changed has some impact on the time that they are now living in, and that has so nexus relation, very very complex relation to the all. Therefore, the whole system will be to some extent touched. The whole system. Therefore, if you say the Boran concept of time is still used, you already say the space somewhere in. If you say time itself.
Yeah, you see all of that. This is why in the province, the Gazette reasoning, you have to have the notion of Earth as a whole, as a province that is part of your province and beyond it. In European education, the concept is very, very small. So a child, we have a lot of problems with black children in the UK in terms of their conception of themselves. So a child living in London. London is a city, like Addis is a city. You'll have a child that lives in South London, one part of London, and they are afraid to go to another area because of the people there, like this. And they will restrict their movement because of the idea of their space. They have a concept that this is my space, I can't go out of it, like this. And they grow with that. It's very dangerous. It's very small. So then even to travel out of the country is a whole different thing, let alone to perceive out of the planet and proper meaningful relationship to this particular object and that particular object away from the planet. They're far away from that. But what you're showing me, what I'm interested in is also how is this education passed? What is the process of education in the Borena? Is this knowledge you're talking about something that everybody should have this knowledge? Is it going to special people? You mentioned some people who are masters of the time, but is the idea of these particular stars, does every child have a knowledge of this?
Yeah, that's why I was saying that there are some gap, essential gap, really essential. Why I say is essential is now they just acknowledge some individuals, some people, as if they have a kind of innate knowledge and a person to have a say on that area, and social and spiritual and moral obligation to follow some individuals.
Okay.
And these individuals have a great respect among the community because of that knowledge. That knowledge is just identified with them.
Okay.
Sometimes you see a kind of knowledge inherited through the lineage. If, for instance, my father is a person who is considered to be in that way, then all my family will be respected because of what we just recognized, the recognition that my father is socially achieved. Therefore, what I'm saying is that now there is a kind of esoteric nature hidden, the hidden knowledge that the social conception, the community's moral doesn't allow for that person to just simply teach others, because that kind of knowledge should be really identified with somebody who is morally responsible, strong, okay, who can hide and who can keep the destiny, who can keep the identity. It has something to do with identity. Then who can be such a kind of social and moral responsibility. And if that knowledge is really dispersed and given to all, then they have a fear that this knowledge would be just exposed in unnecessary ways. Therefore, they don't teach this kind of knowledge. But still, there are again some individuals who they call Jars Gorsa in their very language. Jars Gorsa have also some recognition on certain area of knowledge. This person have an obligation to teach. What kind of knowledge, what kind of thing he teach is that a kind of the political system. He must teach the youngs of certain age. They have age category, agement. Each age has their own moral implication, their own social implication. There are some individuals, particularly those who are from approximately from 50 to 20 something. They go in group, in very large group, and they just have something that they call husu. That is a kind of I can't say singing, just like the concept of singing doesn't really
chanting.
Yeah, something like that. Then those people, those groups have an obligation to go, perhaps in a month or sometime, must have consult that person, Jars Gorsa, and to get cultural value of the society to some extent, political value to some extent, and these people have an obligation, moral obligation to teach in informal ways. But there are some knowledge that people don't teach. And that even the society don't expect them to teach. And knowledge like time reckoning. The best example. The person has no obligation to teach. Even he has a right to refuse. But the other people, the other Borana who are really fine in this identity, who identify themselves that they are Borana, they have an obligation to consult. But that person has no obligation to reveal. If at all he has moral obligation, then if you get married, as I said, if you want to get married, then you have to go and consult. When I have to really get married, it is not you who decide the day you want to get married, but that person should just tell you just suggest the possible, morally possible, socially possible, in parallel with the conception of time. Then it is on that day that you do such a ceremony.
Okay.
And there is a ceremony called name giving. The Borana children have name. That is just the name that their name is not simply given by mother, father, something like parents, but the whole community on certain day. Otherwise, this person is considered as the one who has no name at all. Therefore, in the big ceremony of name giving, even you have to consult that person, the one who has knowledge of time, before you decide the day that you want to celebrate, the day that you want to give the name for even your son. Then to tell you, then he just reconsider all, just what I'm saying, position of stars and all things. And as I've said, other values, like if the day is the day of Aina, he will never recommend. Look at this. It's not the position of star alone, but again something is attached. Then if the day is considered to be the day of Aina, then he will never recommend you. There is a day that a day for burial ceremony. If somebody dead, the appropriate, socially very acceptable day for burial system. If a person die on another day, the day which is not the day of burial, then still they have very bad conception. They consider as if something bad happened to them. Each day has its own social value, as I've said. Therefore, to come to the point now, they don't teach, but still there are some area of knowledge that they teach. Some individuals teach. There are again some very critical area of knowledge that they don't teach. They don't teach. Like I said, of time reckoning.
I hear that.
Even you don't get information about real information about time from the person because he's Borana. No. Even among the Borana, there are those who are socially recognized and have obligation to follow. Then to follow that, things are really very much complex. Those people have really a moral restriction. Even starting from food, the way they speak, there are some food that they don't eat. Those who are identified with such knowledge have obligation not to eat some kind of food. Just
like what?
Like meat.
They don't eat meat.
Part of the slaughtered animal. Let's say a goat. Part of a goat. There are some part that such a people don't eat.
Do they eat meat? Some parts of the meat.
Some part of the meat, but some part
they don't eat.
It can be this. Just.
Yeah, I see.
It can be. Yeah, there are some part. Other people eat. They don't. It is believed that if they do, then still they distort a moral knowledge, a social knowledge, social responsibility.
I hear you.
Therefore, things are very much connected.
I'm interested in those things as well, like the restrictions that keep these guardians pure, the liberty, the way of living that keeps those persons who are given that who are holding that position in the right form. Yeah, I'm interested in those things.
Yeah, that is another very important point. And now, perhaps if we have another chance, then we'll discuss. And meanwhile, I will explore the area. Even the way they count days, as I've said, now they don't have a concept of week, just weeks, like 7 weeks, 3 weeks, but their concept of time, there is a big concept in their conception of time, the concept of Mara. Mara means just kind of, the concept cycle is not really just enough to say, to translate into that English word, a concept of Mara. They have the name for the first day, for the second day, for the third day, for the fourth day, then other remaining 4th day will be included here. The Mara of this, the Mara of today, just like we say a week from now, a week of today, we say that, a week of today just is not. But the Mara of today, if they say, just it has a kind of, perhaps if they say, there are some word, indigenous concept for this. The Mara of that day, that future day is included here in the concept of Mara. just it seems like weak. Therefore, even what I really personally recommend you is that to understand such a thing, we have to understand those values. Those values even I didn't really tell you to the point, detail. Those values are very important to understand their conception of time. Those values are very much really needed to understand.
I get you. See, in regard to that, I don't know the specific details that you're talking about, but I have everything you said so far. I have a complete empathy with the principle of it. There's nothing you said that sounds out of ordinary or out of the way. The way that I see as the way. That is the whole reason why I've come to study it, because I'm trying to preserve, or rather, preserve and establish a clear way for people who are very far away from it. So the Borena have it, and obviously there's some pressure on the community. But the people in other countries, African people who are still looking to Europe and things like this, they're very far away from it. And my school here, it has a relationship to modern institutions and to ancient order. So it connects them in a way that is respectful to everybody, like this. So I'm trying to justify, even make it clear why we have to value. Even when you said about the month overlapping, for me that's right, because it's organic. Time is organic. Like in a day, one thing that is called a day, they say on the clock it's 24 hours, and that each second is exactly equal to the other second. So that means every day is exactly equal. But science knows that every day is not equal. The way the earth is moving, some days are a bit longer than other days. In truth, it's organic. That's the truth of it. So then the calendar system should have to be organic. That's right. So I know this. So I'm saying to you, although the detail, I do not have that, but the principle of it, I'm very clear about the principle. I think with your guidance, meeting these people, if they are willing to share everything that they shared, I am open to embracing it. In fact, I have already embraced it, and it only serves to clarify it for me. And with the clarity, I build these things, the curricula, and the way to bring it into the curriculum. Before I met you, I was just with the director for the ministry just now, and we had a very lovely meeting talking about bringing unified approaches forward and the potential ways of doing that. So this is my position.
That's good, and still I have already promised you just to have to explore those very important area of their knowledge.
You personally, do you think that it is right for particular persons to hold that knowledge? Like in the modern system now, you could say everybody, all the knowledge of science that's there, anybody can say, I want to learn about physics and be a master of physics. Anyone can go into the school and take it on like this. But you're saying to me, this time knowledge, not everyone can do that. Do you think that's right for Borena? Do you think it should maintain that system for the future?
Of course, it is very difficult to give a value judgment here to say it's right or wrong. It's very difficult to say.
Oh, of course.
Why? But it is really, really nice for you to say, do you think? That's personal question. I can just say my feeling. In my opinion, and as far as really I exploited the area, they have a reason to do that. Mm-hmm. They use knowledge of whatever it is for the common good. Mm-hmm. The Borana have a kind of conception of being together, mm-hmm. at all, not exclusion, being together. Mm-hmm. If politics of the whole. Mm-hmm. If life of the whole. Mm-hmm. there's no individualistic conception of life, of being. Therefore, that person has an obligation really to keep that knowledge alive. An obligation, moral obligation, social obligation. That obligation, not obligation of particular clan or particular tribe, but obligation of the whole community through that person. And that person is said to be a person of the whole identity, the whole community, not a person of that family.
Okay.
Therefore, although it seems that the knowledge is confined to restrict to some individual, that individual, the point is how they conceive that individual,
Okay.
how they conceive
I hear
that person.
that. That's clear.
And hence, perhaps we can just easily, just roughly say that it's not good to restrict knowledge to some particular individual or identify knowledge to some particular class. It's really, it seems that it's palatable to say, but they consider knowledge itself as something that has a moving force, a force that gives directions, a force that makes sense of a life, directions. Then such a knowledge should be really kept alive, protected. It is because of that, because to protect that knowledge, that some morally, really, from the historical point of view, they know each other, right person for that right knowledge. But still, you have the right to learn. Everybody has the right to learn. But the point is, not everybody has the right to apply, or decide, or say, do this, do that. Although you know, you have no right to just order the society that they have to do this in that month. In each month they have some kind of spiritual performances. Then that spiritual performances must be consulted from the people who are expert in time. Then, although you know really exactly know what kind of thing that you're going to do at what time, you have to really get really permission from that person. Why? That person has a moral obligation to protect that knowledge, such a knowledge. Therefore, they're restricting knowledge to a specific particular individual has something to do with protecting knowledge itself. Therefore, they don't explicitly say that you don't have to learn. They don't say, but by just natural consensus, they have such an agreement that somebody from some clan is really a proper person with such a knowledge to protect that knowledge. That knowledge is protecting society. And things are really interconnected in the holistic. It has the holistic understanding of why they do so. You got me?
I'm clear. That's good.
Yeah, somebody was criticizing them, saying that they have a kind of hidden, forbidden knowledge, which is wrong. I saw such a criticism. Of course, good to criticize, but the best thing is to approach, to really come into things in their own right, not from the external point of view, very mechanical conception, but from the social, from that society's point of view. If you see, then you see things different. Therefore, why they don't teach? Why they teach some selected area of knowledge, and why they just jump over the other area of knowledge has their own very different reasons. That is why I said it's difficult to say that all this.
No, I realize it's a difficult reasoning, but it's clear what you said. I get it.
Yeah.
It's clear. Okay, well, I mean, I'm sure we could keep talking, but I'm very glad to meet you, and my determination to come to the region is very strong. And for me, it was one of the priorities of coming to Ethiopia. However, there were other priorities in bringing my students, my members here, having them do their touring and our expedition, our graduation and things like this. I had to do these things first. So for me, I would happily come here and spend 2 months doing this, having this conversation. Very happy to do it. But yeah, there is a time for everything. So yeah. And I think I will be here again in January. That is my intention. All being well, yeah.
We can keep in touch through email or something like that, and we can even communication now possible.
Yes.
Wherever you are.
Yes.
That is good, but if you just have a plan to come again, then perhaps I wish you, if you really go down to the society and just take a look at them.
Mm-hmm.
Just really take a look at them. Things are, of course, the world is written, but not in the right way. The world is today written, but not in the right way. If I read something written about the Borana society, sometimes really that is a kind of confusion, because something that even I know is really distorted. Something even I know. Academically, it may give sense to you. But if you really see from the original point of view, then that is totally childish work. That's some research, even in some research, that considered to be very, 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 very good. I saw such a kind of distortion, and there is a kind of anthropological impact on even the African culture. The work of anthropologists must be really reviewed. From really, I love your approach. Because it can be even a response to the external criticism, to the European criticism. Now, I remember somebody, a Kenyan philosopher, who said that Africa has no concept of future. Perhaps Professor John Mbiti wrote such a thing. Africa has no concept of future. Even they can't plan beyond 2 years, he said. But the reason why he said so is very, very, very ridiculous, because he was searching for the concept of doomsday in the African society, the concept of doomsday. Then the moment he failed to get that concept in the particular culture of the Africa, then he said, if they don't have a concept of doomsday, then they don't have a concept of future. Therefore, Africa has only, he just say in his high language, Sasa and Zamani, present and the past. Therefore, Africa not. Therefore, what I'm saying is that the way you are approaching it can be even a response to some things that is really external, and again, from the internal point of view, it can be really a self-discovery. In my opinion, self-discovery. Perhaps these are our first impressions, and at the first impression, really, you can't say things all that you know, but gradually you can really just reveal it to somebody that you want to tell. Then if you see from the indigenous particular point of view, then you will see something very amazing, very much amazing. These are just to say the European world, the illiterate society. They don't write, they don't formally teach, but if you see now what you are now asking me, why days in a month are 27, then 27, why those first 3 days are not counted? And then if you just add those 27 days in a month, then within a year, how many days you have? Very, very, very much accurate than even the day I know in science, the day I know from the European experiences. Therefore, it is really difficult to criticize such a society, because they were just, as we have said, illiterate. They don't teach, but how? The paradox is how they really used to live on such a very critical issue. Unscientific. We are saying that they are unscientific. Even some people use very, very pre-dialected concept like pre-scientific, illogical. They used to say, people like Levi-Brun, or perhaps but the paradox is how on earth those pre-scientific, those illogical, those unscientific community used to live on such very systematic way of understanding nature.
That's right.
That's why I really appreciate your approach, and I really promise to help you on such a thing. And
Thanks.
if you have another area to just
this is very good. Even the term science. At this moment, you have in the academic world, you have science, and then you have types of science. For me, to teach the subject of science, you should have to know what that word means. You have to know what the subject, the word means. So these words now, they're European words, they're going to Latin. Science means to know. To know, that is it. So then everybody has a science. Every culture has a way to know. It is very simple like this. And when you go to the root, it's the Latin. If you go to the root of the word, you have the clarity. But there's an illusion around it now that science is really just a European way of thinking about certain things. Biology is this, and chemistry is that. But it's just coming to know in particular fields, even in terms of the mathematics. These words, mathematics and science, I would strip them away. Our practice removes them. I use them to speak to the university and to people generally, but in truth, it's unified knowledge. This is knowing, and science means to know. It's very simple. So then if someone has a conversation where they're saying that society was pre-scientific or pre-logical, it's just a complete nonsense to the word. They haven't even looked at the root of what the word means. Simple. It can be dismissed like that.
Yeah, that's why I really appreciate your approach. In philosophy, we used to say such an approach as the hermeneutic approach. The hermeneutic approach, understanding society in the way they are, not from external eye, just spectacles, not looking at them through the external spectacles, but understanding, approaching them in their own right.
You see, that point is comes to empathy. Empathy. It appears to me that some people, whole cultures, have a strong lack of empathy. So then when they build their society, this is why the individual can be isolated like that, because the other individual has no empathy for their connection to the next one. So if you don't have the empathy, then you just can't see things. You can't see things the way they are, as a unity, as a one. You can't see it. So that is part of an African-centered education, is to respect our empathy and to know that a society that is recognizing that, preserving the unity of the all as a front conversation, that everyone knows we are one, like this. That's a key value.
That's really a key value. It's a key value, but to just incur you to ask you some thing about your project now. When you just call for unified knowledge, perhaps it's important to ask. You mean a kind of universalistic project, universal project of building knowledge, which is inclusive? Like knowledge, today people are saying that knowledge is relative to society, relative to culture, relative to just particular thing. Those who are saying that, an exponent of these views, are criticizing the universalistic aspect of knowledge, in which particulates are dissolved. Perhaps I want to say that if you mean by unified knowledge such a conception, such an attempt to build universal just approach of knowledge.
I don't think I would reason it like that. At this point in time, certainly in where I'm living and where my family are from the Caribbean, from Jamaica, in these regions, America, the Caribbean, Europe, the idea of knowledge is very splintered. So the basic idea of unified knowledge is to realize that these things are not supposed to be splintered. That is the very first basic idea. Then in that, the question of who we are, what we are in truth, this is fundamental to it, and the development of consciousness. These things are very, try to keep to very universally simple ideas that we can agree on, that every person can agree that the human being is questioning being. It's one that investigates, examines, explores, innovates. So we work on these simple things. But at this time, whole societies are accepting the fragmentation of knowledge areas. And because of that, people are having problems with their own self-recognition, their own self-development, their own potential is not realized because they're not able to see it. Take this thing, mathematics, then. Because it's considered a separate subject and it is taught in a very abstract way, in a European abstract way, so many people say, I'm no good at mathematics, I can't do it, I don't get it. So many people say this. My point of view, my school point of view, mathematics is the study and application of patterns. That is it. Mathematics is the study and application of patterns. Your breathing is a pattern. Your hearing is pattern. Your walking is pattern. Your heartbeat is pattern. These things are very simple, but they are profound patterns. And if you are to recognize those things as mathematics, then you can't say you're not good at it. No one can say they're not good at it when they're constantly in rhythms, in patterns, and they're constantly seeking to study their patterns and build with them. People want to build. If they're a runner, they want to perfect the rhythm of their running. These things are intrinsic. The way of language, the way of letters and signing, these things are patterns. So the whole thing of language is a mathematics of culture. That is the culture's mathematics. The way you would write or say a word, say it, is a verbal pattern, an audio pattern of a kind. So that the hearing is taking that. But even all these things of the senses in the modern science, you have defined it as 5 senses. But now, you can view them all as one sense. One sense, it is a touch, in the way that light touches the eye senses, the sound touches the ear senses, the chemical touches the mouth, the taste bud senses, and so on like this. So then, there's a unity to it. There's a way to view the thing as a one. Unified knowledge is like this. It's trying to come back to the simple truth
I get
of it.
Somebody was doing research on the Akan is the Ghanaian community, one of the Ghanaian communities, Akan. They have they're similar with the Borana culture, the Akan conception of
the Akan, Ghana. Yeah, I like that. You know, let me just cut one moment. The Akan, in our practice, we say it's Pan-African because we do utilize other disciplines from other places. For the Akan, they have a system called the Dankira. The Dankira is a palette of symbols, the visual symbols. Each symbol carries a proverb, like an African wisdom for the country. They put these things into the fabric, people recognize them. So you see an icon and you know the whole idea behind it. On a particular day or a particular situation, a person might wear clothing with a particular Dankira symbol into it. This is a Akan. They hold that knowledge. For me, in our school, that is a unified language. So we have that. As well as the Amarenia, we specifically reference the Akan Dankira symbols as part of our language. So I've written some work on the method. We would, for example, take an Akan word, write it with the Amarenia. So that's east and west is meeting in a point. Because their script is the European script that they're writing with. Write the Akan word with the African script and then be able to hand sign it. Meaning that I can communicate that visual icon with a hand sign like this. So the Akan, I also recognize them as connected because they still use non-verbal symbolic language. You could have a whole conversation just with the symbols. That's showing them. But if I can make a hand sign that is the symbol, then we can have a poetic conversation in the proverb with just the sign. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the power of that language. If you don't use those symbols, you don't have all of that. That's African language.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Yeah, that is what I mean. And And the guy was just saying that truth is a point of view. Very important saying. Truth is a point of view. And it seems that the guy is relativist, which of course not. He was saying that we can have a universal conception of thing, universal value judgment about things, universal understanding of one thing, but we can know that thing through different methods. You may come from, you can approach the thing from the south directions. I come from the north direction, but we can arrive at a truth that doesn't negate any humanity at any.
That's right. Anyone's experience, anyone's reference.
That's why I ask you that other point. This postmodernity has, in my opinion, some very dangerous qualities, some very dangerous aspect. Then it's good to appreciate diversity. It's good to appreciate knowledge at a particularity, but we have to. You have said a very important concept: consciousness. We have to have a mechanism to preserve social consciousness of particular society. Then that is the point that I used to really fear, because on one hand we appreciate diversity, we appreciate particularity, but what is the good of particular society which is closed in themselves? We shouldn't close society, appreciate particularly at where they are, and close their view about the world. We must have a kind of cross-cultural understanding, cross-cultural communication, so as to make it possible. Things like cross-cultural understanding, trans-cultural understanding. Now we African are now really we have fallen in one big really critical ocean, just like these European boundaries. By the perhaps I hope you know, Africa has no concept of states, just like the state now they have. Ethiopian state, Kenyan state, you get me? That's not an African concept. They don't have such a boundary line. Then the boundary, the Europeans came with such a boundary division or line on the land demarcation. And there is also something. It has something to do with some conceptual value-based division, complementary to which complement with how they divide our land. Then what I want to say is that really it is good to appreciate particularity at where they are in their own right. It's good to understand them from the human point of view, the point. From an approach which doesn't really debase any value of anybody, but still it is good to look for a way forward that can really let the society interact, have a kind of interactions, a kind of confluence of truths, in which truths should communicate, not negate each other, but communicate.
That's right.
In which truths from different corners of the world come to a confluence, a confluence which gives sense to the one who take a look at it, without negating the particularity, without building a kind of project that is universal in itself, as you have said, in itself, but a kind of confluence of understanding that preserve humanity at all. Humanity now, which is at a crossroad. That's why I appreciate your approach. One thing I want to say, perhaps it's very important to me, is that
thing comes to empathy again.
That's the point. That's the point. One thing, perhaps I want to really, I'm also happy to meet you, is that I used to actually think of building something that is even I myself am not clear with. Just like a school now you are doing, a school, you say my school. Now, had it been possible to me, possible in the sense like the capacity, economic capacity, particularly post access, had it been possible to me, the first thing I could have done is that in that area, I would really organize a kind of a school, just like you are doing, a school that in which children the children, the youngs, are learning about themselves, about their whereabouts, about their culture, about views, about even a school in which we can question why even why even the Borana just don't teach such a kind of knowledge. Why they don't do that? A school in which children with such a mentality just are developed. I used to think of that. Last August, I was presenting a paper, a national paper. I met even one person from England, Dr. Mark Sherman. He was from England. He was teaching the local children here in Addis Ababa, the local children, the philosophy for children. He said, philosophy for children. He was teaching them. He collected children from different corners of the city, and he was just communicating with them. It seems that he has an approach of really letting the coming posterity, the generation behind us, know themselves systematically in a very formal way. What I want to say that now in the Borana society, that is a gap I'm really worried about, a gap. Unless otherwise we do such a thing. Now, if for instance possible to do, then not in collaboration, but depending on organization such like that of your school, we can connect such a particular society with what you are doing there, your project. Your project, I hope your project is not a project that is aimed at benefiting a particular humanity there in England, but benefiting humanity at all.
It's a Pan-African practice, and then that is even for me the idea of Pan-Africa is a stepping stone to take on the next unity. You know, there's a certain reunification that has to happen. But then beyond that, there's a globalness that has to take place, a responsibility like this.
Responsibility.
That's
very
right.
good concept. And perhaps in the Pan-African, I remember M. Caesar, who was talking about conceptual repatriation, coming back to yourself. He was talking about in the concept of negritude. He was using the concept return back. If possible, physically return back to your origin, and also conceptually return back to yourself. Conceptual repatriation is such a project.
That conceptual is that is in the nature of the school. In the nature of our practice, there's a realization that is a process. It's not enough just to come back. Even I brought people here. I brought 10 people here this time, and for most of them it was the first time they came here. So I have first-hand experience of people who are black people just coming from the European culture that they've lived in all their life mostly, and then landing in Africa, and how they experience it. It's not one step. There's a process. So our schooling, our method is holistic, so people can develop the strength around all areas, so that you can be free. Even return is just freedom. It's a freedom to be in home places. Let me answer your question about the school. I'm very glad you shared your vision for a school in Borena of the nature that you said, and I think you are a very excellent person to do such a thing. My organization is called Schools of Unified Learning, plural, schools of unified learning.
It's not a school, but
it's not what they are. I get it. It is the incubator of the pedagogy that is inclusive. This is why I can say that everything you've said is complementary to the school's ethos. So therefore, as I'm able to use these platforms to strengthen the structure, then it can go to a professional to build an institution that is not Eurocentric, that is in harmony with the local nature. For me, it's very excellent for students who are members of Schools of Unified Learning to spend maybe 2 years in one country and then travel. This could be someone maybe even 5 years old They're 5 years old. They spend 2 years in one country. They travel to Borena. They spend 2 years there. They travel to Ghana, to the Akan. They spend 2 years there. And each school, because it's in a unified learning, they will have the mutual respect. They will be able to integrate and immediately pick up because of the empathy, pick up the wisdom of the space like this. That is the kind of learning that I'm setting here. That's the vision. And that learning, that is Pan-Africa. That learning is the basis for real leadership. Young people who have learned like this, are worldly, who have that kind of empathy for the world and different cultures, they are fit for the governance. They will be fit for the governance. So what I'm saying in short, what my work is building here, this work is to give you something that you can put into your space. If there's anything that I can give in the way of a structure or access to some resources that will be recognized properly, and say, look, this person wants to set up a school, it's in the mode of these principles, it's completely fine. People won't look at it and say, oh, it's a bit odd, it's a bit... No, because we've explained why it's good to look at 27 days scientifically. I think all of it, I can reason all of it to the science. There's the things, even the things that are considered mysterious. I find a lot of it sits into the science, and we have our own way. The Dogon, you're familiar with the Dogon culture in Mali? Okay, I find the Borena to sit with the Dogon and the Akan. These ones are all family. So these are all cultures that preserve certain special things. That is right. They have something not for themselves, but for the whole. That's why people have to go and study them, because they've got something for the whole. They've got some reference that the whole is supposed to respect. So yes, I would love to see you set a school there. It's not my intention for me to set a school there. My intention is to set an infrastructure that brings the right value, the right protection to your school, so that people will have to say, yeah, that school should stand, and that community shouldn't be splintered like that. If we splinter it too much, something will be lost. That's dangerous. So let's not do that. That is a protection in that way. And like I said, very, very great. This conversation complements the conversation I've just had very perfectly. So, more power. I look forward to seeing the school, supporting the school.
That's really good. That's really good. That's really good. That is really, to be frank, that is what I used to think about. But as you know, we here in Africa, that's unfortunately we are not lucky. We cannot do things that we have planned because of so many reasons, particularly the life standard.
Well, let me stop you there just for a moment, because one of the things about this is language, and the English language it has some trickiness in it. It has some tricks inside the language. Words like understand and habits of speaking negatively. It's very important to keep statements open, for me, to keep statements open for potential. So even if something has been a bad experience of the past, it is to reference that it has passed and to see the potentials for that which you are aspiring to, like this. So unlucky, I don't know if I can use a word like that. The things, the vision that you've had, it sat with you enough for us to have a conversation. Now we are speaking, and like I said, I've just spoken to the person I just mentioned. These are the connections. It is a coming together. That is the nature of our situation, that things are constantly improving. Because it's maybe appears to take a long time, the person who is not fully trained may think this is too long. But the one who knows the time they know, no, it's not too long. It is in the order. This is the
order.
order. It's in the order. That's right.
Yeah.
So for me, it's in the order. This is in the order.
That is good. That is good, really. That's really just good. I can take that as some advice, even. Yeah, that's good. And you have already gone through my understanding, even the things that I have in my mind to some extent. The nature of you have asked me something. What conception, what view I have about a school, and I didn't reply for that. I can really just tell you this from your conception of a school that now you are doing, even your conception of what you are doing by yourself. As far as I understand now, you have a conception of a school, even a project of a school that try to connect the disconnected humanity, the already disconnected, discarded humanity.
Well, let me start like this. I see the unity of the thing. So first of all, it's not one school. It's plural. So it's schools. It's a network of schools. You get that. But in truth, they're not disconnected. In the same way that the Akan, the Borena, and the Dogon are not disconnected. They're in different regions, and maybe the elders of the regions don't meet each other. Maybe they don't meet each other physically. But in the same way that the one Borena who has the special time knowledge is not considered a separate individual. It's the same thing. So for me, these things are really, in the truth, they are already connected. So it's a matter of realization. This work, I'm moving in a realization that these things are already connected, that there is someone here for me to talk to about time, and that reasoning can be presented so that more people can access true self-knowledge, to practice simple practicalities. Not looking at a machine and saying it's time is just a practical, obvious thing that should happen to African people. We should not look at the machine and say this is the time machine. We should not do that. This is simple. So if it takes some years to argue it, till every school, when they say, children, what is time? And then the children explain, and they never say it's the machine. If it takes a few years to do that, okay. But we have to come to that place. It's obvious. That truth is the truth for the Borena, the Akan, the Dogon, and everywhere that's properly connected. And anywhere that's not connected, they look into the machine. That's a trap.
Yeah. Why I say it even disconnected is I'm saying from a different point of view, just like a mechanical.
It appears
building
that
mechanical conception in the human consciousness, like there are, because of some inaccessibility to themselves, because of some academic knowledge, curriculum. Now gap is being created.
It's true.
But gap, although of course I understand, as you have said, things are already there in the system. We're coming to it. We're approaching to it. The system is already there, as you have said. Although we're always going to something ahead of us with some perhaps progress, cultural progress, there are also something that we lose. In parallel, something that we lose. Like, what if even the children in Boran now have such a conception of time, mechanical conception, that if you ask them, then they find for some material, some machine, that is gap. That is gap.
Yes.
By this connection, I mean such a losing culture, losing your own gap in consciousness.
The process seems like this.
Yeah, process.
Yes.
Gap in consciousness.
Yes.
Generational understanding is very important now, in my opinion. By generational understanding, I mean society, one society, from really the preservation point of view, should have continuity in consciousness, in the development of their consciousness of themselves. Should have continuity. I mean, there should not be a kind of discontinuity, gap, that teach the generation to help themselves. Honestly.
It's true. It's
now,
true.
Somebody was saying that the modern education, the modern formal education, teach us to hate ourselves. Children learn to unlearn what they know from their culture, from their tradition.
Mm-hmm.
That is what I mean, gap and discontinuity in humanity. Perhaps, as you have said, the Dogon society, the Dogon community, and the Akan community might have some very basic similarity with the Borana community. But this reality is not being communicated now for so long a time. And the Dogon there, where they are now receiving the modern education, which understands itself at the expense of the other humanity. They are receiving this, and at the same time, here we are now being just brainwashed with such a policy. Therefore, truths that you say is by nature linking is now being disconnected because of something that seemed good to us. Education. Okay. And to some extent, education is in itself is something that we should receive very much critically, very much skeptical about. Question the education itself. Education is not something violent, not something violent.
Not something imposed.
Yeah, imposed. Therefore, imposition, such an external imposition, really disconnect humanity.
It's true.
And that's why I say, what if really I've got a chance to really open such a school? Why not a class of one room, such a school there in Borana, and connect it with schools, unified schools of youth, which is very important. As you have said, the point is to really power, just open the way, open the path for the future leader, human leadership, which understand other particularity, and it is particular variety of truths, variety of regions, plurality of truths, plurality of way of knowing. What if really I get a chance to really? That's the what I was saying. Otherwise, we will be disconnected.
Well, first of all, that chance is clearly it's alive. That chance is a living growth. It's an intention. That intention that you had from before we never met, you had that, and it is in complement with the intention I'm sharing. It is a right. So it's a very powerful thing. That is a driving force. I think that I'm studying the intrinsic nature of our being. The intrinsic nature of our being. So even you can pretend, a person can pretend to be something that they're not, but there's some intrinsic truth to what they are really about. And so even if you go through many generations of miseducation, the truth can slide back into place. This is my reference to it. It's something I'm exploring because it needs more evidence. But there are other scholars like Wade Noble.
Camera ones there in my pocket. Yeah, I can use yours. Okay.
Yeah, the one like Wade Noble, he has a concept of sign stimuli, that the certain sign, certain symbol or way stimulates the right way to be, like this, and some creatures can just respond to a sign and come into their right order without any training, without any idea of the education. So for me, I think that these things will come in intrinsically. It's a connectedness and a global awareness. For example, in Europe is going through some problems with money. Do you know that? Right. Now, it appears to me that people in other places don't all know that. And so the old conception of what money is, they're still holding it. When Europe is left it, they know that the money was a trick and it's just a fake thing, and that there's real truths that have to be dealt with, trust and integrity between nations and persons, that these are the real issues. If we are global in our thinking, then we'll see that, and then we don't have to fall into the same pit. That's it. the truth of the connectedness and the truth of our nature. I feel these are the things that will keep life. There's a truth to it, so I have every confidence in that. That's why I don't want to let you continue with a word like disconnected, because I don't see it as the real truth, even though things don't appear to be as connected as we might want to see it. But there is a truth to it which is very connected. So more profoundly connected, in the same way that those elders who just can see why you should get married on this day. And the community, I don't take the community as just guessing that, like they're just believing it. I don't take it like this, not for old societies. I take it that these people are intelligent, free-thinking beings, and they have a way to know that, yes, the wisdom is with this one. We have an integrity in the way that we know, that we entrust this person, this family, these ones, to reason out things or to express certain points. I take that integrity. This is it. So I have that trust in it. This idea, the schools of unified learning, is exactly set to support this. I'm very pleased to hear that you want to set up a school. This is I have.
You wanna go? Yeah. Say just right. And,
you have to go.
Yeah, some.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
See you again.
Okay. This book, this is a part of my writing. I have written some books like this to be published. This particular one is written for you, as a person who would say to me, I want to set up a school. This explains the method from a point of, not so much the educational pedagogy, but the pedagogy with structure, organizational structure of how schools can work, certain structuring of it. So there's a book to do with the teaching methods, and this is a teaching method and management. So I've written for a person to ask that question. I want to be able to answer them like this. That is, all of this is specifically to such a person. Even I'm realizing that this book is very specialist, because not everybody has that conversation. But I have to write it, because that person who would want to do that is a very delicate flame that has to be kept going. This is it. So yeah, this is it. I'm very, very happy to meet you.
So me too. Me too, really. And I'm always really ready in case you need for help to my capacity, and I hope we'll keep in touch.
Yes, of course.
And I already promised you that I will explore such an important view from the indigenous elders there. I used to live there, and it's not something costly for me. Then I can get them. You don't get in Borana. There are some cities, some small cities, and there is a kind of clash of culture between the urban, those who are living in the urban and those who are at a distance from the urban, and knowledge is there at a distance from the urban in Borana. Of course, but the researchers that I used to even that I used to consult, there are those who are limited to the urban center, but those who are in the urban center are at a distance from very, very, very original knowledge. Those Borana who really have a real conception about time, about days, about life, are not those who are now living in urban, at a distance from the urban area. Now, there are elders who are now in 50, 60 to 70 some age. They get very much old, and they don't come to such an area. Then getting knowledge from the Boran needs somebody to go there That's what I promise you. I'll contact them and I can really.
I'm very happy to do it.
I can help you in anything.
I'm very happy to do it.
This is our obligation. I think that is good.
Let me say I am, like I said, the school has a cultural arts practice called Dankira Tehwagi, warrior dance. It's martial. It's a martial dance. That's, for me, that's part of a training, development, physicality, mentality, and all aspects to be ready. So I'm very ready to go where we have to go. There's no border.
Yeah.
There's no border to it.
Yeah.
And even I'm happy to go. Well, I'm expecting to go and just be there. Really, I'm not necessarily thinking that I have all the right questions to ask, but I do know being there and sharing will continue the creativity, will continue the development, and so I'm very happy for it. Like I said, the reason I got to Borena, even like I use the title before I answer that. I use the title Ras Astehmari. Always people see me, they see this, they say Rastafari, Shashamani. Always like this. I haven't been to Shashamani this time, but I use the term for the reason.